Welcome to a new episode in the Multiverse video series. Today we're going to learn how to use Airflow with Apache Spark using R. So what is Airflow? Well, Airflow is a workflow management system that was developed originally by Airbnb, and it's an open source project. This is the original blog post from the Airbnb engineering team from back 2015. One of the characteristics of this particular system is that it supports DAGs. DAGs stand for Directed Acyclic Graphs. And basically what this system lets you do is schedule batch jobs in a more ordered and more easier to maintain way. So for instance, if you have a process that you need to run at night to process data, using R or Python or whichever language you're using, you can compose a set of different tasks that then you can organize with a workflow such that they execute consecutively and in an easier way to orchestrate without having to worry which process is running exactly when. So this is the original post, but to get a better idea on exactly how Airflow works, you can go to the airflow.apache.org site, which gives you an overview of how Airflow works. And in general, the basic concept is to declare what are the tasks that need to be executed overnight in a batch processing manner. And once you have this definition, you can basically track which are the tasks that fail, which are getting executed, and why not. Now, a pretty common use case of Airflow is to use it with Spark jobs. So what you can do is basically define one of these jobs to be an Apache Spark job, such that at some point, at a given point, like basically your workflow executes and pre-process data and why not, and some of the processing can be done in Spark, with Airflow being the scheduling system that coordinates not just Spark but also multiple other tasks. So in order to get started, what do we need to do? Well, the easiest path is to look at the quick start on the airflow.apache.org site and kind of like follow these instructions. And this is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to do all these from RStudio. So, so the first step is you want to pip install Apache Airflow. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically, let's start with a new terminal. So first of all, we need a Python environment. So I'm going to run. And if you don't have Python installed, this is something that you would want to do before this particular video. So we want a Python environment, which now we have. And then basically what we want to run is basically the installation comments that are provided in the Airflow website. So we've installed Airflow. We want to also initialize the database. And we want to start the server, the Airflow server, at a given port, which in this case, we're going to do port 8080. And what we also want to do is we want to start the scheduler. So for this, again, we need another Python environment, which in this case, we can just use this one that I have pre-created and basically start the scheduler. And the scheduler is the component that basically executes the tasks, while the user interface and the server is the one that provides you access to it. All right, so we're running Airflow at port 8080. So now we should be able to basically navigate to Airflow. All right, so this is the Airflow UI, is basically running, up and running. And, there's a lot of functionality. This video is not about learning to use Airflow, but mostly about integrating Spark with Airflow when using R as your programming language. So yeah, definitely, you might want to spend some time also getting familiar with Airflow, but for this video, we're just gonna assume that you have an instance of Airflow already up and running, which either your system administrator would provide for you, or you kind of like provision a proper Airflow instance, as with not exactly by following the instructions on this video. Anyway, so we have Airflow running, which is great. So what do we do next? Well, I would recommend you take a look at the quick start, but as a way of setting up your system. But then afterwards, you want to jump to the tutorial. So it's still on the Airflow site, and basically the way it works is, like if your job is perhaps to maintain R scripts and Python scripts, and Apache Spark, and why not? One way of the one approach that you can take is to use Airflow and basically define these workflows, on your own. So that's what we're gonna do in this case. So we're gonna define a new workflow, and in this case, it's just a very simple workflow that all it does is prints a date. I'm gonna name it Sparkly R, mostly because we're gonna build on this particular workflow to also use Sparkly R and Spark using R. Let's just name it Sparkly R, and we're gonna save it. Now it's important to save it in the Airflow directory under the DAX folder. I'm gonna replace this one that I have, and that's pretty much it. So again, what this is doing is just defining a very simple workflow, which the task that is going to perform when scheduled is to print the date. And again, it's pretty simple, but it's a great start. So to continue here, what we want to do now is we want to get another, let's get another task. Sorry, another terminal. And then what we want to run is we want to tell Airflow to run the Sparkly R workflow. And the particular task that we want to run is print date. So we're going to run that. And we should be able to see this particular task in the UI. So if we go to jobs, we can see that we're basically executing this Sparkly R job. And it finished and succeeded, and that's it. And again, this one is not a very interesting job because mostly it's just printing the date. All right, now this kind of like has gotten us up and running with Airflow. So what we want to do now is just pretend that we're doing data analysis in Spark using R. And again, this could be like a separate person on a different team, or it could be yourself. But suppose that someone is using R with Apache Spark to do some simple computation. And again, this is not going to be, the focus of this video is not on data analysis. So we're going to do something very, very simple. So the first thing we want to do is we want to load the library properly. Right, so we load the library and then we want to connect to Spark. And then we're just going to use the empty cars dataset. That's pretty much it. So we're going to copy the empty cars dataset. And then what we want to do, we might want to do something very simple like cars. We're going to count the number of fields on this dataset. And again, this is obviously a toy example, but you can run this at scale in Spark if you have a proper cluster and proper data. All right, so in this case, we're basically computing the count. And then what we want to do, since this is a batch job, is we want to is to save the output, because this is not going to be an interactive session on Spark. So you basically want to load all your data set and process the data set and then save the output, either as a model or as a data set, or why not. In this case, we're going to use Spark write CSV, and we're just gonna call it, let's see, I'm gonna set the full path, which if you're using HDFS, you would have to use, HDFS properly, but since this is just an example, we're working with our local environment and a local cluster. I'm gonna call this count.csv. Right, so let's just make sure that this works properly. Right, so we have our count of records, which again, it's a very simple analysis. So let's go ahead and delete this. And then we're gonna disconnect. Oh, second, just disconnect. And we're gonna save this. All right, so we want to save this. In this particular case, I'm just gonna save it in as batch. I'm gonna call this batch.r, which right now we executed all this interactively, right? Which is not exactly what we want. What we want is to run this in scheduled through Airflow. But usually what you would want to do first is do interactive data analysis. Maybe someone else in your team already created R file that is using Spark and Sparkly R, and you want to productize these using Airflow and Spark. So whichever way, you end up having a batch.r file, which now our job is to basically run this file in Spark as a batch job. So how do you do that? Well, so in order to run a batch job, what you want to use is Spark submit, which it's just the default way of submitting batch jobs into Spark. So we're going to do that. We're going to say, we're going to give the full path. I believe I'm using Spark 2.4. And then we're going to say bin Spark submit. All right, so this is how you would submit just a job. This is not enough. What we want to say is we want to specify the class, which is Sparkly R shell. And we also need to specify the path to the jar, which you can get in R from something like this, which will give you the path to the Sparkly R package. But what you need to do here is to get the particular jar that we're gonna that Spark is gonna use. So in this case, it would be something like 2.3 jar, and then yeah, once we have the jar, we have we're specifying the class. And then basically what we would do is we need to specify the port and the session, which in this case for batch jobs is not that interesting. And we would then specify the name of the file that we want to execute as a batch file. And again, if you're using HDFS, you would have to might have to configure this properly, but it's a similar approach. Let's see, Airflow, and then we have our batch file. So let's see if we get this to work first. Hopefully, hoping that I'm not forgetting anything. No, we'll try again. So basically, what this is executing is just rerunning the same R code, but in batch mode. And if you're using a real cluster, when you connect from a batch script, you still use Spark connect master equals local, and the master you actually specify it from your you specify your master from your actual Spark submit command. The Spark submit is where you specify your master to the proper cluster, and then the batch script is just using the batch file on its own. Let's just check something here. Go to Airflow, and we have a few tags that I've created previously. Actually, let me just go back. We have this one, and there's a different one that I want to show. So let's see, Airflow. Right, so here, I want to make sure that we're getting the right comment. right? So let's rerun that. Right, yeah, we have the shell, we have the jar. Oh, yes. Yeah, so yeah, you need to specify the dash dash batch parameter, which I'm pretty sure we forgot last time. So that was the reason why the previous job did not succeed. Right, so this one is looking a bit more promising. All right, it finished. Yeah, so the first command that we run, we forgot to pass the dash dash batch parameter when executing Sparkly R in batch mode. You want to make sure you pass the dash dash batch parameter. Right, so as you can see, we have rerun this particular script in non-interactive mode, which is the first step that we would need when executing inside Airflow. All right, so this pretty much, once you have these two things running, so what we want to do now is we want to recopy this command, which is the batch command that we used in order to execute Sparkly R in batch mode. And then what we want to do is we want to modify this particular workflow to also include executing our Sparkly R workflow. I'm gonna copy this and we're gonna name it count, right? And the bash command is basically our entire Sparkly R. Is correct? Let's see. Yeah, it's the Sparkly R command that we use to start Spark from R, right? So that's pretty much it. Let's see. So again, we don't have anything here in this directory, which is completely empty. And what we want to do is rerun the command that we previously run to submit to Airflow. But instead of executing the print date task, we want to execute the count task, right? So let's just make sure here, we have only 7 tasks that have been executed. So when we rerun this particular job, we want to make sure that this is getting executed. Right, so now it's getting submitted to Airflow. We should be able to track progress at some point here. We have this particular task, which is executing. And apparently it finished, but I don't see the output. Let's see what went wrong. So we run Sparkly R, which is the name of this particular task. It has this count, and let's see. Oh, let's just give it another run. It's actually executing quite fast, so my guess is that we're missing something. Let's see. So if we go on check the tag runs, no, we might want to check the logs. So this one was the last one. Sparkly R. Well, I would hope that this one is the last one. Oh, this is print date. We don't want to execute print date. Count and print date. Let's see. Yeah, this is just executing too fast. Count and print. Let me just check something else here. This looks good. This is the tag, this is the count, and this is the batch. Yeah, so far so good. Let's just make sure that this is saved on the proper folder. So we want to see it in Airflow DAX, and then Sparkly R. One of the things that you can do is you can also list the DAX with Airflow. So yeah, we have the Sparkly R utils here. Let's just recreate it and make sure that we're getting the right one. So if you delete it from the DAX folder, it should disappear, which is what's happening here. Let's just recreate this particular file. and we want to save it in the Airflow DAX folder. DAX. All right, so we have it saved. Now it should appear again. Yeah, that looks good. Sparkly R. And then the task ID that we want to execute is the count. And this is the comment, which is basically running Spark submit, the shell, the particular jar, the session, and then the batch.r file. Which, yeah, this one is also the correct path. Yeah, it should be. All right, let's try it again. And we're gonna go to DAX. Oh, sorry, we want to go to back to code, Airflow, and this should be the output folder, because mostly this file is always writing back to Airflow count.csv, but it's not, and it's executing properly. I mean, it's succeeding. So how can we troubleshoot this? I just rerun this and I didn't hit this particular issue. Count. Task ID count. Oh, task is in the success state, which is not a valid. The task must be cleared in order to be run. Oh. Here, so I'm not an expert. I must say that I'm not an expert on Airflow. So this goes beyond my knowledge. But apparently, it might be the case that on Airflow, tasks need to be created, cleared. So let's just do something different. We're just gonna rename this particular task count again. I'm pretty sure this is not the proper way of doing things on Airflow, but again, the point of this video is not to become proficient on Airflow. It's mostly to show how you would integrate Airflow with Spark and R. So I'm just gonna rename the task and call it count again, which should be fair enough, and we're gonna rerun it. So in this case, when we go to browse and look at the jobs, we should also be able to see the task instances. Wait, we don't even have the new task instance. Let's see. Okay. That guy cannot be found. Oh, okay. I have the wrong name here. Try again. So the name of the workflow is Sparkly R, but the name of the task is count again. Let's just give it another shot. And we should see here in Airflow now the new task, which is count again. And now in this case, it's actually in state running. Before it was really weird because it was just moving. It wasn't going through running state. It was going directly to success. So my guess is that in Airflow, you actually need to clear up the tasks and do this in a proper way, which, again, I'm not an expert in Airflow. I'm mostly trying to get Airflow to work with Spark and R. So this is still executing. It has finished. And now, sure enough, we can see that Spark got actually executed and created the count.csv file, which, again, similar to the way that we executed this particular data analysis in batch mode. But the really cool thing is that it got executed through Airflow. And this basically means that if you're proficient with Airflow, you can actually also create multiple tasks with different components, right? Like you don't need to run everything on Spark. You can run some pieces on R, get the output, like pre-process it, then on Spark, mix it out with Python, and then bring it back and use Julia, and why not, right? So it really allows you to create very heterogeneous system of tasks and dependencies, and then you can get some quite interesting output of what are the things that actually got executed and why not. So again, I'm not an expert on Airflow, but I'm sure you can find other particular tutorials to teach you how to use Airflow. And then when you have the need to actually integrate this with Sparkly R, as we mentioned, the way that you would do it is by submitting the task to Spark Submit using batch mode in Sparkly R. All right, well, that's about it for this particular video. I'm hoping that you find this video useful and that if you have the need to using Airflow with Spark and R, you would know how to get this started. Thanks again.